Good morning. Please stand with your school community. If you wish, please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And here's Charlie with the announcements.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. It's March 20th, and it is a green day. Juniors and seniors, an Air Force recruiter will be on campus today from 10:30 to 11 in Colby 101 conference room. Be sure to check in with your teacher before attending. Today's the day. The 3v3 basketball tournament is happening right after school in the alumni gym. Teams of 3 to 5 players can still enter for $10 per team. Grab your friends and come compete. There will be drinks and snacks for sale. Spectators welcome. Attention all student writers and oral creators. Next Wednesday, Writer's Block is sponsoring an after-school open mic event in the Mayo Lounge. This event is open to the entire student body. If you have an original poem to slam or you want to recite one of your favorite poems, if you want to sing, karaoke, or a cappella, or bring an instrument and play a song, or if you want to give your inner comedian a chance to shine, this event is for you. We're still between sports seasons, so no conflicts. Refreshments will be served. Hope to see you there. The event runs from 3:30 to 5:30, so come on down to the Mayo Lounge. Congratulations to March recipients of Chef B's Random Act of Kindness. For the seniors, Mr. Lovett's advisory. For the juniors, Mr. Jones' advisory, and for the sophomores, Mr. Kane's advisory, and for the 9th graders, the Thompson advisory. Advisories, please pick up your treats anytime after 7 a.m. tomorrow morning? Probably this morning. It's Friday, so it's time for Michael's joke of the week. What's a dinosaur's least favorite reindeer? No, you have to guess. Yeah, it's a comet. Someone got it. Ha, ha, ha. Ha, ha. That was funny. Okay, so happy birthday tomorrow to Chloe Johnson, and on Sunday to Gloria Hahn, Madeline Gray, and Nathaniel Poole. Happy birthday, everybody. Okay, that's it. So everybody should have a good weekend, and I'll see you Monday.
Happy Friday, everybody. Please believe me that today is the first day of spring, the vernal equinox, which means that on this day, the length of the night is equal to the length of the day. On the vernal and autumnal equinoxes, we have just for one day this wonderful perfect balance between daylight and darkness before one begins to tip into the other. And again, we have more of one and less of another. I like to think there's something special in this balance, that we can in fact feel it in some way, and that it readies us to move into days that are better lit for longer, and where light lingers a bit to help us make better sense of what we see around us. Speaking of which, it is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Arain to help us make some better sense of what we see in the world right now. Mr. Arain.
Good morning, everybody. I am a little bit afraid. If you didn't get Michael's joke of the week, I'm not sure you're going to get what I'm talking about up here. Just saying. All right. I'm also afraid because I am nervous coming up here. I've been granted just a very short amount of time, which I'm very thankful for, to talk about a topic that is extremely complex. And I am also weighted by the fact that we're talking about this topic, right? This is a war that is being carried out in the name of you and me, if we're U.S. citizens, right? And there are those who are in favor of this, there are those who are against it, and I want to be right up front and say there are valid arguments for both sides of those. I mean, I have my own position on it, but there are valid arguments. So for those of you who might laughingly dismiss the other side, I ask you to think again and to look at both sides' arguments, because there are thoughtful people who have advocated for an action like this, and there are thoughtful people who have said that this would be a mistake. So with that in mind, let's get going. So the United States is now at war. Why? So the United States and Iran have been enemies ever since 1979, when the Islamic Republic was created, and when some Iranian students who were angry about U.S. support for their extremely unpopular king seized the United States Embassy and took U.S. diplomats hostage. Those hostages were held for some 444 days before they were released. So what is this Islamic Republic of Iran? And actually, before I get into that, I first of all just want to show this map here, right? So we are off on the far left-hand side of this map. I hope you recognize the Great Lakes over there. And this is the region that is commonly called the Middle East, sometimes it's called West Asia. But this is a really, really key part of the world. It's super interesting and dynamic culturally, but as we all know, parts of this region are very rich in. So coming back to this Iranian Islamic Republic that seems to so vex the United States, let's take a look at what this is. So the Islamic Republic is a really unusual form of government. It is a government that on the one hand is democratic and yet at the same time is also theocratic. In other words, run by religious leaders, clerics, if you will, right? And this flow chart kind of shows you what I'm getting at. So off on the left-hand side is the electorate. That's the voter, like you guys will someday be in your countries, right? And the voters, they really do democratically elect a parliament, they elect a president, and they elect this assembly of experts, which I'll ignore. So that part of the government is democratic. That's something that we can relate to. But when we get to the middle and right-hand side of this chart, then we're getting into the theocratic realm, the part that's run by clerics, right? And so we see there the supreme leader who is not elected, right? This is a person who is voted in, and as far as I've known, the only turnover of supreme leaders is after they die. So effectively, when they're voted in, they're effectively voted in for life. And they are usually, I mean, there have only been two of them, real religious scholars. The first one certainly was. The most recent one who recently died, was killed, he was less of a scholar. But regardless, these are religious leaders. And then that Guardian Council up there, that's also a key body of unelected people. That council, the Guardian, they make sure that any laws that come out of Parliament are in accordance with Islamic law, as they interpret it, right? And that Guardian Council can also determine who may run for office. So there have been times in recent Iranian history when that Guardian Council has been a bit more liberal and has let more moderate people run for office, some of whom have been successfully elected even into the president position. At other times, this Guardian Council becomes more conservative and reactionary and really puts a tight limit on who's allowed to run for office, meaning they'd want somebody who's just as religious as they are. And that's the way the Guardian Council has been for probably the last decade. So, back to the war and why we're fighting. So Iran has long been developing nuclear technologies and knowledge that could lead to the successful development of nuclear weapons. Iran has also been developing missile technology that could eventually lead to missiles that could reach the United States. I think intelligence assessments believe that they are still years and years away from having that kind of missile technology, but they are certainly developing missiles that can reach their neighbors near and far and could eventually perhaps get to the United States. So Iran is viewed also as a threat to Israel. one of America's closest allies, the closest ally the United States has in this region. And it supports proxies, these are effectively militias in the region, that are poised against Israel. Iran calls Israel and the United States the great Satans, and it's a regular thing to hear in Iranian mosques, which are pumped with government messages, chants of death to Israel and death to the United States. That is not to say that there aren't a lot of people in Iran who look at the United States through a much different lens, much more friendly, and indeed admire our open and democratic system. So Iran is also not loved by its neighbors, due largely to ethnic and then religious differences. But you could argue that the path to war really began on October 27, 2023, when Hamas militants raided Israel and massacred well over 1,000 people and took many more people hostages. Iran was the only country to applaud Hamas for that massacre. Israel's government then responded with an attack on Iran, and the two countries have effectively been at each other's throats ever since. President Trump and others have long felt that the threat posed by Iran's government needs to be dealt with militarily if necessary. And others have argued that it's best to negotiate with Iran. That was the path taken by the Obama administration. In June of last summer, Israel and the United States coordinated strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. This was called the 12 Days War, 12 days of bombings. The Trump administration claimed that the bunker-busting bombs that were dropped from B-2 stealth bombers obliterated Iran's nuclear program. The United States then entered negotiations with Iran, indirect negotiations because we don't have diplomatic relations, but still negotiations all the same. And those negotiations were geared at getting Iran to give up its nuclear program, to stop enriching highly enriched uranium, and to give up also its newer technologies on ballistic missiles. But the Trump administration clearly was not satisfied with the progress in these talks, so it, along with Israel, launched these most recent attacks at the end of February. So where do things stand now? So, first of all, I want to take a look at a map here of the region. So there we see Iran in this kind of orangish umber color. And then we see these other states around it, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Oman, the UAE, and Turkey. Those are all really key players here. And then over on the Mediterranean coast, we have Israel as well. Okay. So, first of all, a few leading Iranian politicians and government leaders have been killed in these strikes. And you may know their supreme leader was killed on effectively the first day of these strikes. These strikes have been led primarily by Israel, and they've certainly killed a number of key figures in Iran's government. Iran's Air Force and Navy have been nearly wiped out. The United States and Israel can seemingly attack with Iran almost with impunity. But Iran knew that all of this going into that war, and so it prepared in different ways. It developed technology for years now, and indeed it has sold its technology to Russia for its war on Ukraine. Iranian drones are slow, but they are effective and they are cheap. Weapons that can shoot them down cost way more than the drones themselves. Also, Iran has been stockpiling ballistic missiles. Before the war was launched, Iran's supreme leader said that if the United States and Iran attacked Iran again, Iran would make this into a regional war. In other words, it would not just be between Iran and the United States and Israel, but it would draw others into the conflict. And that is what it appears Iran is doing right now. So experts have long known that Iran could close the Straits of Hormuz to shipping in a conflict. So do I have that here? Actually, let me back up here, show you a couple more slides. Here are different nuclear sites in Iran. Here are U.S. military assets. All those blue stars are U.S. military assets. And then the red ones are sites with, a U.S. military presence there. Okay. I'll come back to this. So, looking at this region, we see the Persian Gulf here. next to Iran, between it and Saudi Arabia. Right here is the Strait of Hormuz, and this is a choke point. 20% of the world's seaborne petroleum and liquid natural gas must pass through this passage. And people have long known that if we go into a conflict, Iran could seal that off. And that is exactly what Iran has done. So currently, about 150 ships are anchored outside of this zone, waiting to either enter the Persian Gulf or to leave it. So the movement of 20%, 1/5 of the world's oil and natural gas, is just halted. Furthermore, Iran has been attacking petroleum infrastructure. That means pumping facilities, it means refineries and other things, and are thus reducing production capabilities of oil. The United States and Israel, particularly Israel, have also been attacking such facilities that belong to Iran. That also reduces oil production. So let's go back to this slide here. All those blue dots represent strikes by the United States and Israel. The red ones represent strikes by Iran. And you see it's not limited to Israel or even just to American sites, right? They've hit Saudi Arabia, they've hit the United Arab Emirates, they've been hitting sites in Iraq, and even a couple sites close to the border of Turkey. So where is this all leading? So the answer is we really don't know. The Trump administration has no great choices. It would clearly like to see Iran's government collapse, but Iran's government is resisting collapse, and it is not going to be easy to just make that government fall apart. We've called for Iranian people who hate their government, and many of them do, to rise up. But how? They have no weapons, and the Iranian government and its security forces are armed to the teeth. And if the Iranian government collapses, what shall replace it? Probably not a democracy. It could be led by radicals in their security services. We simply don't know. It is possible the Trump administration could draw down when it determines that Iran's ability to produce highly enriched uranium is destroyed. That would be a possible stepping off point. But then, that stuff is still there. And how do we secure that highly enriched uranium? How do we get to it? Do we send in troops to make that happen? That's a huge question. And where else could this lead? So first of all, Lebanon is being drawn into this conflict. So Iran has proxies in Lebanon that are hostile toward Israel. And so there's fighting there right now. And there are tens of thousands of people in Lebanon who are being displaced from their homes because of Israeli strikes in southern Lebanon. There are Kurdish people who speak Kurdish in this region, in Turkey and in Iraq, in Syria, and in Iran. There are thoughts that the United States or Israel could encourage those Kurds to fight a separatist battle against the government of Iran. That would certainly upset Turkey, which has been dealing with Kurdish an ethnic group for a long time. So that could draw Turkey into this conflict. Turkey is also worried about what happens if a whole bunch of Iranian people decide that, stuck as they are between their own security forces and Iranian, U.S. and Israeli attacks, that they might just leave their country and become refugees. One of the destinations would almost surely be Turkey, and Turkey has already been overrun by refugees from Syria. Those refugees could also go on to Europe, which would pose more political problems there. Finally, I think we should just keep in mind and not lose sight of the fact of just the simple human toll of this conflict, right? For people in Iran, there are so many innocent people in Iran. They don't support their government, and yet now they are also being victimized by what is happening here. So, as I said, an extremely challenging topic. This afternoon, in the library, in the Mayo Lounge, some of my colleagues and I will be offering a slightly more in-depth presentation that can go into some of the greater details and into the history of what's been leading to this, and I would love to see you there. That will be at 3:15 in the Mayo Lounge. And if you're curious about this, and if you care about this, which you should, again, this war is being fought in your name, please come, learn a bit more, and see where you stand, and maybe that can help inform your choices, voting, or protesting, or writing letters, or simply supporting those that you support. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Arain. Please do go and continue this conversation, and we hope that Mr. Arain will come back and his colleagues will come back and update us when there's more to be known. Thank you for hanging in, everybody. Have a good Friday. Have a good weekend. Faculty.